Sabrin, or Sabrin, hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, is professor of finance in the Anisfield School of Business at Ramapo College of New Jersey. He's been a member of the faculty since 1985. He has a PhD in economic geography from Rutgers University, an MA in social studies education from Lehman College, and a BA in history, geography, and social studies education from Hunter College. Uh, he has worked in commercial real estate sales and marketing, personal portfolio management, and economic research. Well, welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a
Yes,
pleasure with you.
it's great to have you. We'll like to ask you a few questions just to get right into it. You've written quite a bit about the fact that political parties have become virtually indistinguishable, and I was wondering if you think Ron Paul's ideas being injected into the mainstream have really exposed the whole fallacy of this left right paradigm.
It goes beyond that. More than 40 years ago, when Richard Nixon closed the gold window and declared himself, we're all Keynesians now, I decided that we essentially have one party in America. It's the Washington Party with two wings, the Democrats and the Republicans. And for the past 40 some odd years, they've proven me correct because no matter who's in office, whether it's Republicans or Democrats in the White House or controlling Congress, spending keeps on going up, money printing keeps on accelerating, regulations keep on expanding, wars keep on occurring. And so what we have is this consensus that Washington cares about Washington and everyone cares about their own politicians, and the public has to deal with this. And Ron Paul coming along has been probably the most, uh, for lack of a better term, I think revolutionary development in American politics because they're essentially the Washington Party and the Ron Paul Party in America today.
Do you think, therefore, he's permanently altered the way the system works? Is this only a temporary change, and during the next election, we're going to go back to the two-party system, or do you think the whole system is now going to be different because of this election and because of what Dr. Paul has done?
Well, I think the political landscape has been altered forever because Ron has put into place the notion that Washington is the problem, as Ronald Reagan said in 1980. He's the only presidential candidate in my lifetime that has talked about the Federal Reserve. He's the only one that's questioned our military intervention overseas. He's the only one that's talked about getting rid of the income tax. He's the only one that's talked about downsizing the federal government to its constitutional limits. And so what we're going to see, I think, now with the young people who are going to be paying these enormous bills if nothing changes, that there has to be a fundamental restructuring of the federal government, something I've been talking about for a long, long time. And Ron has been doing it in Washington for more than 30 years. So I think we're going to see, no matter what happens to this campaign and this election, the movement toward a free society that many of us have been working on for decades.
Yeah, and speaking of all of these ideas and a movement towards a free society, what impact do you think that Revolution PAC has had on the campaign and helping spread these ideas?
Well, this is the great thing about the super PACs is that they are finally acknowledging that free speech exists in political campaigns. Uh, I think if we have free speech, or we're supposed to have free speech, it also means free speech in the political campaigns. So the only reason we have super PACs is because the Congress and the courts have not recognized or not allowed people to make unlimited contributions to campaigns. With disclosure, this would tell the American people who's behind each candidate. So if Newt Gingrich can get somebody to support him with tens of millions of dollars, we want to know why that person is willing to support Newt Gingrich with tens of millions of dollars. Now they have to do it through a super PAC. And so if there are people who are willing to step up and write these big checks, let the campaign use those funds to get the candidate's message out rather than everyone complaining about all these so-called negative ads that are taking place. All negative ads really are is simply telling the truth about your opponents. And so find it quite ironic that the truth is now considered a verboten thing in political campaigning.
Yes, yeah, or in times of war, I've heard, or truth is the first casualty of war. It's often been said. Absolutely agreed. To transition to another topic, the idea of truth and getting ideas out there, I think, can really educate us about many different subjects, including that of economics. And there's been a lot of talk amongst Keynesians that saving on an individual level, while maybe that's a good thing, it's not so good to save on an aggregate level. And common sense tells me that what's good for the individual is also good for the group. And that if it's good to save on an individual level, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to not save on an aggregate level. Yet those who have a PhD in economics, such as Paul Krugman, can't seem to understand that. What do we say to people like him?
Open letter to Paul Krugman based upon his column yesterday in the New York Times, which I posted on my website, murraysabrin.com. And I find it remarkable that economists who teach at the graduate and undergraduate level really have no understanding of markets and how they work, which is the foundation of economics, the price system, supply and demand. And business people don't care about aggregate demand or aggregate supply. All they care about is, are there customers for my products? How can I improve my products? What resources do I need to increase the production of my plant and factory and get products into people's hands at the lowest possible price so I can generate the largest profit for my business or my corporation? And I just think it's just incredible that students are learning what is considered, I think, from us Austrians, mumbo jumbo about how the economy works. Because when I teach corporate finance and I show students how the markets work and how corporate finance decision makers have to deal with the real economy, it is totally opposite what they learn in economics, namely aggregate demand and aggregate supply, which doesn't factor in whatsoever in decision makers when they have to do capital budgeting and cash management and all the things you need to do to run a successful business.
Well, we have only have a little bit more time here, but speaking of the fact that you teach corporate finance and all the ideas you have to offer, perhaps you could let everyone know where people can find your articles and perhaps videos of yours as well, so we can all learn a little bit more about what you have to offer.
Yeah, I have my own website, murraysabrin.com, where I try to write at least once or twice a week an article about what's happening here in New Jersey and around the nation. I also write a column for politicernj.com, where I essentially discuss what's happening here in the state of New Jersey with Chris Christie and the budget situation and the taxes in the state of New Jersey. And then a lot of my articles are picked up at newjerseynewsroom.com, which tends to repost a lot of my articles from my own website and Politiker NJ. And of course, there's a YouTube channel, I guess, from my 2008 campaign for the United States Senate, where I tried to get the Republican nomination and discuss the Federal Reserve and all the things that Ron has been discussing for many years as well. So I also have an occasional talk at Tea Party groups and guest lectures at college. I just gave a talk at NYU and a small college here in New Jersey, Felician College, of a talk that really incorporates a lot of the things that I've been discussing for a long time, namely how the business cycle affects business decision makers. It's called Managing in an Era of Financial Instability. And I go through basically the business cycle, interest rates, the economy, and why the stock market has been going up and down, and relate that to how business decision makers have to deal with these wild fluctuations of the economy, and why the textbooks give students, I think, a false impression that all you have to do is learn all these great subjects and you become successful in the business world, when in fact you have to realize that there is a broader economic environment in which you have to function. And my job in the classroom is to point this out, that there is an environment out there that that gives us a lot of instability, and that you have to prepare for all the contingencies of what the policymakers do that affect the economy.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sabrin. It's been very interesting hearing from you, being a financial advisor myself, and also a reader of all these different subjects. I'm certainly going to check out your writing further, and just want to thank you for sharing your time with us.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity. I think there are people all over the country that are looking for people who you're having on today who have the ability to articulate the ideas of freedom, of non-intervention, and why Ron Paul would be the best candidate, obviously, to lead the nation over the next 4 years. But more importantly, and this is the point I want to make, Norman Thomas ran for president 6 times, didn't win a thing, didn't even come close. Yet if you look at his 1912 platform, virtually every idea has been implemented in federal law since 1912. So that tells me that even if Ron Paul doesn't win this time around, his ideas and our ideas of freedom and liberty will live on, and they eventually will be part of the American uh, economic political landscape, I think, for decades to come.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.